Mukesh Aghi, President and CEO at the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, which has been lobbying on behalf of some of these US firms. Mr. Aghi, thanks for joining us. The deadline has expired. What happens now?
Well, I think, I have to say that the objective is to comply with the RBI order. But I think there has to be a consultative process, which has been lacking. But more important is we've asked for extension of deadline so we can meet all the technical requirement, and so far nothing has come. So I think they will scramble, and some will meet the timeline, others will not meet the timeline.
Aghi, you're saying this, they'll scramble, but from what we understand, these are complex data processes that need to be shifted, and mirroring has not been accepted. So is it even possible to scramble and meet the requirements?
Well, as I said, there has been a lack of consultative process with RBI. We have asked for meetings to understand what are the requirements, what needs to be done. These are complex operations. In a world where we live in cybersecurity threat on a daily basis, a card stolen in India can be used within 30 minutes in London or New York. And if you balkanize the data, then you lose that global security on credit card itself. So I think it's important that we have a very strong consultative process and understand its complex technical issues which needs to be addressed. But I think that's what's lacking. So, we just have nowhere to go but to see what happens if we don't meet the deadline.
Is there any information or communication on penalties or strictures that may be imposed on companies that are non-compliant?
Nothing of that sort. I'm saying we've been trying to reach out. We've written. We've gone to Ministry of Finance, and RBI is just one-way communication that you have to meet the deadline. Otherwise, you may get penalized. We have no idea what really happens here now.
To the extent that it's in the control of the card companies, are they committed to ensuring that services to customers are not impacted in any way?
Well, I think obviously you have to take care of the customer, and these customers are not just local, they're global customers, and the card companies are trying everything to ensure that their services are not interrupted. And I'd like to re-emphasize that the objective here is to comply with the requirement of RBI. We're not trying to not adhere to the objective, but I think there has to be a better understanding what are they looking for, what kind of data are they looking for, and then we can provide that data on a local basis itself.
Mr. Aghi, one of the things that we've been hearing locally is that the companies were not even interested in complying. They were relying on the fact that the RBI would change its mind. But you're saying that they have clearly communicated that they want to comply. Can I ask you how early in the process was that communicated to the RBI and then more time sought to meet the requirements?
Well, I think this was when the order came out in April. We requested a series of meetings with RBI to understand what are your requirements. We gave a solution on the mirroring side where you can mirror the data locally itself in India, but that got rejected. They just wanted to completely balkanize the data for India itself. And we said, fine, we need a little bit more time to look at the technical issues, all the details itself. But again, there has been only one-way communication. So I think early on, the multinationals, especially US companies, did not object that they don't want to comply with the order. I think we need to have a better understanding what are their requirements which can be met.
Have there been conversations at a government-to-government level as well on these rules?
Well, I think the US co-chair of the Senate side on the India caucus has written to the Prime Minister. I think Secretary Ross has written to his counterpart in India, Suresh Prabhu. So I think there has been interest on the part of the US to reach out and find a solution which meets all the requirement for India. But again, it's a consultative process. We live in a democracy, and you got to be able to give and take to understand so these companies can comply. And we are working especially with RBI, into a black hole, and it's a one-way communication. And while everybody scrambles to meet those requirements, it is important to understand a little more details would help, a little bit more time would very much help. I think that's what we are seeking.
Any other options of recourse that are being discussed?
No, I think we are basically reaching out to every source we can, both in India and in the US. And I think there is enough what I call is common sense. It will prevail. You don't want to disrupt the customer itself. You want to be able to provide what is needed by the RBI. And if it's going to take a little bit longer time, I think common sense dictate, let's try to find the right solution so we can adhere to the request itself. But I think at the moment, as of now, we don't have indication that we will get the extension to meet those requirements.
Mr. Agi, the Economic Times reported on Monday that you've raised some concerns about a local organization, iSpirit, being involved in the negotiations or the discussions. Can you detail what those concerns are?
Yes, we did raise, because you have a group of local payment companies which would like to definitely dominate the local market, and they are not keen to have the multinational payment company come into the domestic market, and we feel that they are working in partnership with RBI to make things a little more complex. And I think that's where the organization called iSpirit has not been empaneled by the RBI or anybody else to become the technical advisor. So we feel that there is a slight conflict of interest here. Again, the US companies are keen to provide world-class solution to the Indian market. They're keen to compete in a fair manner, and that's why we felt very uncomfortable that you had iSpirit advising RBI while they compete also out there in the market with us.
Okay, understood. Should the rules remain unchanged, can you detail what the cost implications, particularly for the card companies, will be?
Well, I think obviously there's a lot of cost implications, because you'll have to set up local data centers. But I think a bigger issue is you completely come out of global supply chain. And I think if the data is required, especially for card companies don't have names of the users itself. They only have the spending and the data itself. The bigger, more important data lies with local banks itself. I mean, you can go to State Bank of India, you can go to Punjab National Bank. Who issues the card? Basically, they have the names, much more data available itself. So I think if you're trying to get names and data connected together, then you already have it with the local banks. Card companies are willing to provide that, but all we're saying is give us a little bit more time so we can look at the technical solution, because it's a complex environment, and you don't want the card users getting completely out of sync with the global cybersecurity, global supply chain, and that's the request these companies are making.
To be fair, Mr. Agi, some of these companies have complied with similar rules in other countries, haven't they?
Well, I think there are other countries which are requiring, such as China, such as Russia, and but again, there was a process which these companies went through. They took time to look at it and met the local requirement. And I think when you get a circular from RBI, more like a diktat, saying you got to do this without any consultative process, it kind of sends a wrong message. And you have to understand, we are here trying to encourage more and more investment into India. And on what basis we justify other companies when they say there's lack of transparency in what's happening by RBI, it makes our job much more difficult. So I think, again, I like to emphasize, these companies are not saying that they will not provide data locally. All they're saying is, let's have a consultative process, let's give us some more time, and we'll make sure that you get the data you want.
Okay, last couple of questions, Mr. Aghi. At this stage, what is a reasonable time frame that you're asking for to meet these requirements?
We have requested 12-month period with RBI to give us that, and so we can make sure that we provide you world-class data which is integrated with RBI or anybody else itself.
And you're willing to commit to milestones along the way so that we don't come to a situation where 12 months later, again, these companies are not ready?
Absolutely. I think that's why we need to have a consultative process. So you're able to sit down and say, get 3 months, this milestone, 6 months, the next milestone, 9 months, and the 12 months. And, these companies are here to make sure that they obey the local rules, laws, and at the same time serve local customers, bring them world-class solution, and make sure they are integrated into the global cyber environment also.
All right, Mr. Aghi, thank you so much for answering all of our questions.